I thought it was all over. I thought CD Projekt Red were done with Cyberpunk 2077, but things have changed. We got the unexpected announcement of the 2.1 patch. It's going to add a ton of content, a lot of changes, but that may not be the biggest part of all this, because the door may now be open to a second Cyberpunk expansion. It always seemed a bit odd to me that CD Projekt Red would go to all the effort of revamping Cyberpunk purely to release Phantom Liberty and then just move on. Before the game came out, they made it clear that they wanted to support the game as much as they did with The Witcher 3, which did have multiple expansions, and they were even talking about a multiplayer mode for Cyberpunk that was later cancelled. They clearly had very big plans for it. They just never came to fruition because of the poor reception. But things have changed. They've revamped Cyberpunk. 2.0 has been well received. Phantom Liberty, it was quite popular. It seems to have sold very well. And it was a much better first impression than the original game was. It came out, it reviewed great, and things were looking quite a bit brighter. They are looking brighter for CD Projekt Red. But even as of a few weeks ago, it seemed like CD Projekt were just ready to move on. The days of Cyberpunk were over, at least until an eventual sequel is released, and it was all systems go for The Witcher 4. But something happened. Out of nowhere, the announcement of a live stream where the 2.1 patch was unveiled. We got a ton of updates, changes such as the metro system, which did seem for the longest time like we'd only get something like that in a sequel. I believe it was teased, it may have even been in videos very early on in Cyberpunk's marketing, but it seemed like that ship had sailed. And yet, years later, we're getting it now. Why now? They didn't have to release this. Conversation around the game is already very positive around Cyberpunk, and while they do have the Ultimate Edition coming out in a little while, which packages Phantom Liberty together with the base game, it just seemed out of left field, especially after they previously did say they were done updating it with significant content. Well, things may not be done with this game, because there is a clue that has popped up on Twitter, and it is this tweet where a fan reaches out to Paril Sasko, who quest-directed Phantom Liberty and The Witcher 3, so he's fairly high up there when it comes to producing the content, and the fan tweets at him saying, "So if we ask hard enough, another expansion?" referring to Cyberpunk, and then follows up with, "I know you're reading this," directed at Powell. Powell responds with a coy-looking emoji. You know, kind of like a YouTube thumbnail. Now, this obviously does not guarantee or promise anything, but it is interesting to me that he would even respond at all, because if we weren't getting any more content for Cyberpunk, it would only serve to create disappointment if he's pressed on it in the future. Why respond if down the track you're only going to say, Cyberpunk won't be getting any more content, the 2.1 update was a one-off? It just wouldn't make sense. Given the state that Cyberpunk was in when Phantom Liberty development started, it is very possible that CD Projekt Red did only have plans for the one expansion, because they had no idea how it was going to sell or how the community was going to respond. The controversial release of Cyberpunk was new for them. Witcher 1, 2, 3, relatively smooth in terms of reception, but then you get Cyberpunk where they were the laughing stock of the internet. They were even labelled scammers in the worst of cases. And at that time, it just seemed to be all about damage control for them. They wanted to fix Cyberpunk, they wanted to get an expansion out, but it was more about doing the game justice. They seemed to not be thinking too far ahead in terms of Cyberpunk's future. But if Phantom Liberty has exceeded expectations, and the buzz around that release, 2.0, created even more sales, maybe CD Projekt Red, they've had a rethink. In fact, it's not a maybe, because the 2.1 update, it clearly wasn't planned in advance. It seems like they decided to do this specifically because there was interest in the game, and this will keep people talking about it in the long term. Perhaps this unexpected resurgence of Cyberpunk is causing CD Projekt Red to go back to their original plans. 2 expansions instead of just the one. Nearly 4.5 million copies of Phantom Liberty have been sold, which adds up to something like $125 million in revenue, and perhaps doing another is now too good to pass up. All the hard work has been done to get the game into a state where it's positive eyeballs are on it, and people are now hungry for more. It also has to be said that despite there being a ton of patches over the last few years for Cyberpunk, only a handful of them have actually added content to the game. Back in 2021, the majority of patches were bug fixes trying to rescue the game from the tarnished state that it was in. They eventually added content in 1.3, which included a better crafting system, better vehicle handling, improvements there. Then you finally had 1.6. That was when they added the Roach minigame, the arcade machine, and the Edge Runner's quest. But aside from that, there hasn't actually been a lot. We essentially missed out on years worth of genuine post-release content because they had to fix the game, and maybe, just maybe, CD Projekt Red have decided they don't want to throw all this goodwill away, start completely from scratch. It's clear with 2.1 that they want to continue this. Maybe a bit like The Witcher 3, which had a ton of unique free quests and other quality of life improvements that they added over time. Even if we don't get a brand new physical expansion, I do think it's very likely we'll keep getting patches like this. Half of CD Projekt, they're working on Witcher 4, but it's not clear what the rest of the main team are actually doing. It could be a Cyberpunk expansion, it could just be more of these patches which keep adding new content. If they aren't releasing a paid expansion again, these patches, they're just going to keep interest growing in the game, which may pay off down the line and ensure that there's plenty of hype leading up to a Cyberpunk 2, which we do know is coming. There is just so much potential for Cyberpunk that could be realized with new content. While new characters like Reed and Songbird are cool, I think a lot of people would be very happy with just adventures with the current cast, like Panam. Maybe even more adventures with Jackie, perhaps a patch that expands on everything we did with him before the heist. That has always been talked about as being perhaps cut content, and then they restructured the game to be more around Johnny, so Jackie sort of got the short end of the stick. That could be cool. Perhaps even a long quest line where you go undercover within a Biotechnica or Arasaka. Really see how corporate life plays out day to day in Night City instead of just running around in the streets for the most part. When it comes to the 2.1 patch itself, it's very solid. The Metro system, it's probably the biggest piece of notable content that is in there, but there's certainly other bits of genuine content, like the revamped Atom Smasher fight, a gang reputation system, which will essentially see goons chase after you on car, on foot, if you kill too many of their friends during gigs and missions. There are also secrets to unlock and find, such as a new car related to Johnny. It sounds like it's not simply buying it off the internet shop, but instead you'll actually have to discover it in some way. There's also going to be new romantic hangouts. I believe you can invite, say, Panam Judy back to your apartment. And it will be interesting to see if they're adding new voice lines for these characters, because if they're going to that effort, you would think that they're certainly going to be open to creating brand new content. It's not going to simply be quality of life updates. And what I will say is, while all of the quality of life stuff is nice, if this is all we get going forward, let's say a 2.2 comes out and there's no new real content, it's just quality of life, that is fine, but I don't think it's really going to bring people back to the game, get them reinstalling it every time, aside from maybe hardcore players, because people are only going to want to play through this a certain number of times. While it's cool that you can use, say, your radio on foot, that's something that goes along really nicely with a brand new expansion, a brand new quest line or something. It's not really something where you want to reboot the game, play through it all over again just for this small feature, especially if you've already done this a few times. When it came out, when Phantom Liberty 2.0 came out, you probably don't want to do it every single 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 patch. That is also why I genuinely think new content is on the way. Going to the effort now to improve the game at this stage, it only makes sense if they're going all in. The argument against that, of course, would be that they're moving to Unreal 5, but with the amount of time it may take to get their teams up to speed on the new engine before they actually get into building and releasing a new game like Witcher 4, that could take ages. So maybe it does reinforce the idea that continuing to create content for Cyberpunk, it makes sense. It allows the studio to remain relevant, test ideas that may eventually come to a sequel many years from now, and it just avoids a massive dry patch of nothing from CD Projekt Red, given Witcher 4 is likely coming out in 2026 at the earliest. Another missing piece of the puzzle that fans have wanted for a long time is New Game Plus. I mean, even Starfield, which can't even get a working, usable map together, even that was able to get a New Game Plus in our hands. So surely CD Projekt Red have no excuse. I could actually see a substantial New Game Plus being a big selling feature of an expansion, or even just a standalone patch. Given the setting, they could easily add some time travel shenanigans, and maybe Johnny is aware that you've been through all of this before in your second playthrough, but V, they've got no idea. Making it more than simply playing the exact same game again at level 60 with your same guns and powers. Maybe there could be a bit of story in there, tie it all together. The runway is clear for a second Cyberpunk expansion, or at the very least, more substantial content via patches. This shouldn't be the end. The city, the world, the features, they're great. Now is the time for them to blow us away with further original quests, areas, more content, just like Dogtown, Phantom Liberty, and this 2.1 patch. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.